When I first heard the word self-discipline, I thought it was about waking up at 5 a.m., forcing yourself to work, and pushing through pain no matter what. But over time, I learned something surprising. Most of what I believed about self-discipline was wrong. The truth is, discipline isn't about punishment or deprivation. It's about design, understanding, and a deep awareness of yourself. And once I discovered these 6 truths, they didn't just change my habits, they changed my entire life. The first truth is that motivation is unreliable. We often wait to feel like it before taking action. But feelings are temporary, and motivation comes and goes like the weather. If you rely on motivation, you only work on sunny days. Self-discipline, on the other hand, is the ability to act regardless of how you feel. It's about setting systems in place so that your decisions are not left to your moods. The second truth is that willpower is a limited resource. Many of us believe we can just push through, but willpower gets depleted with every choice you make throughout the day. That's why the most disciplined people remove unnecessary decisions from their lives. They create routines, habits, and environments that make the right choice the easiest choice. You don't win by fighting temptation, you win by designing your life so temptation rarely appears. The third truth is that discipline is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters most. Many people burn themselves out, trying to stay disciplined in every area of life, but true discipline is selective. It means identifying the few key behaviors that truly move you forward and protecting them fiercely. Saying yes to everything doesn't make you disciplined. Saying no to what doesn't matter does. The fourth truth is that identity shapes discipline more than effort does. If you see yourself as someone who is bad with money or not a morning person, you'll unconsciously act in ways that reinforce that identity. Discipline sticks when your actions are aligned with who you believe you are. Change your identity first and your habits will follow naturally. The fifth truth is that self-discipline grows from self-respect, not self-hate. You can bully yourself into working for a while, but resentment builds and you eventually rebel against your own rules. When discipline comes from a place of self-respect, when you follow through because you believe you are worth the effort, it becomes sustainable and even joyful. The sixth and final truth is that small disciplines compound into extraordinary results. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. The little choices, the 20 minutes of learning every day, the consistent savings, the daily walk seem insignificant in the moment, but over time they create transformations so profound they feel like magic. I share these truths because I've lived the other way, depending on motivation, pushing until I burned out, forcing myself into routines that didn't align with my values. And the change didn't come from working harder. It came from understanding discipline on a deeper level. Discipline is not a cage, it's a key. It's the structure that frees you, the practice that empowers you, and the choice that changes you, one action at a time. 5 keynotes of the speech: motivation is unreliable. Systems and routines create consistent action. Willpower is limited. Design your environment to make good choices automatic. True discipline is about focusing on what matters most, not doing everything. Identity shapes habits. Lasting discipline comes from aligning actions with self-belief. Self-respect fuels sustainable discipline, and small daily actions compound into life-changing results. Motivation is one of the most misunderstood concepts when it comes to personal growth and achievement. We often glorify it as the secret ingredient behind every success story, imagining that the most disciplined people in the world wake up each morning with an endless supply of energy, determination, and enthusiasm. But the reality is far less glamorous and far more practical. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are inconsistent. They fluctuate based on mood, energy, sleep, weather, health, and countless other factors beyond our control. Relying on motivation to dictate when and how you take action is like trying to sail a ship using the wind alone. Some days it blows strong, some days it's weak, and some days it's completely absent. This is why systems and routines become the backbone of consistent action. They act as the engine of the ship, allowing you to move forward regardless of whether the wind is in your favor. Think about how many times you've been inspired by a video, a quote, or a personal breakthrough and felt unstoppable, only to have that fire fade after a few days. That's motivation behaving exactly as it's designed. It's a short-term spark, not a long-term fuel source. The danger is that when the spark fades, people assume they've failed or they're simply not motivated enough. In truth, the problem is not a lack of motivation, but a lack of structure that can carry you when your emotions inevitably dip. Systems and routines are that structure. They are deliberate patterns of behavior that remove decision making from the equation and replace it with automated, almost instinctive action. Consider something as simple as brushing your teeth. You don't wake up every morning evaluating whether you feel motivated enough to do it. You just do it. It's ingrained in your day to the point where not doing it would feel unnatural. That's the power of a well-built routine. By making certain actions habitual, you bypass the emotional negotiation that so often derails productivity. You no longer wake up asking yourself, do I feel like working out today? Instead, it's time to work out. The choice is already made because it's built into your system. The beauty of systems is that they protect you from the fragility of human willpower. When you're tired, stressed, or distracted, systems still guide you toward the behaviors you've committed to. A well-designed system is like a well-lit path through a dark forest. You may not always feel excited to walk it, but you know exactly where to step next. Without that path, you're left wandering, relying on bursts of energy or inspiration to push you forward and inevitably losing your way. This is why the most consistent people don't necessarily have more motivation than the rest of us. They've simply built better systems. They understand that relying on motivation is like relying on good weather. You can't control it, but you can control your environment, your schedule, and your triggers. You can prepare your workout clothes the night before, so exercising in the morning requires no thought. You can set up automatic bill payments so your finances are handled without relying on memory or willpower. You can schedule specific times for deep work and protect those blocks from distractions as if they were non-negotiable appointments. The more decisions you remove from your daily life, the more energy you preserve for the actions that truly matter. Decision fatigue is a real phenomenon, the mental exhaustion that builds up as you make choices throughout the day. If you're constantly deciding when, how, or whether to take action, you're burning through mental resources that could be better spent on actually doing the work. Systems solve this by making the decision once and then simply following through repeatedly. Motivation might get you started, but systems keep you going. This is why professional athletes, top performers, and highly effective leaders all have structured routines. They don't wake up every day with extraordinary motivation. They wake up with a plan. Their environments are arranged to support that plan, and their days are designed to minimize opportunities for distraction or delay. This doesn't mean life becomes rigid or robotic. It means the foundation is solid, and within that foundation, there's room for flexibility and creativity. Over time, these systems not only replace the need for constant motivation, but also build a sense of trust in yourself. You begin to see that you can follow through on commitments even on the days you don't feel like it, and that trust becomes a powerful form of self-confidence. Instead of chasing the fleeting high of inspiration, you're anchored by the steady rhythm of consistent action. And when motivation does show up, it's no longer the fuel you depend on, it's the bonus that helps you go even further. By shifting your focus from chasing motivation to building reliable systems and routines, you break free from the emotional roller coaster that stops so many people from making real progress. You create a framework where action becomes the default, not the exception, and where your success no longer depends on the unpredictable rise and fall of your feelings. This is how lasting discipline is built, not in bursts of passion, but in the quiet repetition of deliberate actions day after day until they become second nature. Willpower is often portrayed as the ultimate driver of discipline, the invisible force that pushes us through challenges and keeps us on track. We admire people who seem to have an endless supply of it, assuming that their success is simply a matter of being stronger, tougher, and more determined than everyone else. But the truth is, willpower is not an unlimited resource. In fact, it's one of the most limited forms of mental energy we have. Every decision we make, every temptation we resist, every moment we choose between what we want now and what we want most, all of it drains our willpower bit by bit throughout the day. The more we rely on it, the faster it runs out, leaving us vulnerable to poor choices, procrastination, and burnout. This is why even the most disciplined people don't depend solely on willpower. Instead, they design their environments, habits, and routines to make the right actions easier and the wrong actions harder. If you think about it, willpower is like a muscle. It can be trained to become stronger, but it also fatigues with overuse. Just as your body gets tired after repeated physical exertion, your mind gets tired after making too many choices or resisting too many impulses. That mental fatigue doesn't always feel like exhaustion. Sometimes it shows up as giving in just this once, skipping one workout, eating one unhealthy snack, or postponing an important task until tomorrow. By recognizing that willpower is finite, you can begin to use it more strategically. The key is to stop using it for battles that can be won in advance through better planning and environment design. For example, if you're trying to eat healthier, keeping unhealthy snacks in the house forces you to resist temptation every time you see them. Eventually, your willpower will run low and you'll give in. But if you simply don't buy them in the first place, you've eliminated dozens of small daily battles and conserved your willpower for more important decisions. Environment design works in the opposite way as well. You can make the good habits you want to build easier to do by removing friction. If your goal is to exercise in the morning, laying out your workout clothes the night before removes a point of hesitation. If you want to read more, placing a book on your pillow before bed ensures it's the last thing you see before sleeping. Small changes like these make it less necessary to power through moments of resistance because the path to action is already cleared. Routines play a critical role in conserving willpower. When a behavior becomes automatic, it stops being a choice that requires mental energy and starts being something you simply do. Think of how little willpower it takes to brush your teeth, not because you're more motivated to do it, but because it's so ingrained in your daily rhythm that skipping it feels unnatural. Building routines around your most important habits transforms them from optional tasks into non-negotiable parts of your day, drastically reducing the number of times you need to summon willpower to get them done. Another factor that drains willpower is decision fatigue, the gradual erosion of mental clarity and self-control that comes from making too many choices. This is why some of the most effective leaders and creators simplify their lives in certain areas, wearing the same type of clothing each day or eating similar meals. Every unnecessary decision eliminated is one less drain on the limited supply of willpower available for the decisions that truly matter. The more you can automate the small things, the more mental energy you free up for the big ones. The other side of willpower management is understanding the role of triggers and cues. Our actions are often driven by the environment around us in ways we don't consciously realize. A phone on the desk can trigger endless scrolling. A TV remote in sight can trigger hours of passive watching. By controlling these cues, either removing negative triggers or intentionally adding positive ones, you reduce the number of times you need to say no or force yourself to say Wes. This isn't weakness, it's smart strategy. The less you rely on raw willpower, the more consistently you'll follow through. It's also important to understand that willpower is often at its highest earlier in the day. This is why many experts suggest tackling your most challenging or important work first, before the stream of decisions, distractions, and temptations begin to chip away at your mental reserves. Procrastination often happens not because the task is too hard, but because by the time you get to it, your willpower is already too depleted to handle it effectively. By aligning your schedule with the natural ebb and flow of your willpower, you increase the odds of success without having to force it. The people who seem effortlessly disciplined are not fighting harder battles than you. They're fighting fewer. They've created systems that allow them to win before the fight even starts, using their willpower not to push through constant resistance, but to set up conditions that make resistance minimal. They understand that relying on sheer mental strength every time is a recipe for inconsistency. Instead, they save that strength for moments when it's truly needed and let structure and design handle the rest. By shifting from a willpower-dependent approach to a willpower-efficient one, they create discipline that feels less like a struggle and more like a natural part of who they are. Many people think discipline is about pushing yourself to do more tasks, more commitments, more hours of work. The image of discipline we often see is a person with an overflowing schedule, ticking off every item on a long list and never slowing down. But in reality, true discipline is not about doing everything. It's about doing what matters most and protecting it fiercely. It's the ability to identify the few critical actions that truly move you forward and to let go of everything else that distracts you from them. This shift in perspective is what separates people who are simply busy from those who are truly productive and impactful. The challenge is that our culture tends to reward visible business. We equate a packed calendar with importance and constant activity with dedication. But activity and progress are not the same thing. You can fill every hour of your day with tasks and still not move meaningfully closer to your goals. Without clarity about what truly matters, discipline can become an exhausting performance of effort rather than an intentional investment in outcomes. This is why the first step in real discipline is not to push harder, but to prioritize better. When you start focusing on what matters most, something powerful happens. Your discipline becomes sustainable. The reason many people burn out is that they try to spread their effort evenly across too many areas, treating everything with the same urgency. This leads to a life where every task competes for attention, and you're constantly switching focus without ever fully committing to the few things that could create the biggest results. True discipline requires the courage to say no even to good opportunities because they pull you away from the great ones. This selective discipline can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've been conditioned to believe that being available, agreeable, and constantly on is the key to success. Saying no can feel like you're letting people down or missing out. But the truth is, every yes you give is also a no to something else. Every hour spent on a low priority task is an hour not spent on the work that truly matters. Discipline is the skill of making those trade-offs consciously rather than letting them happen by default. One of the most effective ways to practice this is to clearly define your non-negotiables, the core actions that directly support your biggest goals. For some, it might be a daily workout, dedicated hours for creative work, or uninterrupted time with family. For others, it could be strategic thinking, client outreach, or learning new skills. Once you know your non-negotiables, you structure your day around them. They don't get squeezed in when you have time. They get priority on your schedule before anything else. This approach doesn't mean you ignore everything else in life, but it ensures that the most important things are never compromised by the urgent but less important distractions. Another aspect of doing what matters most is recognizing the difference between high-value and low-value work. High-value work moves the needle. It has a direct and significant impact on your goals. Low-value work may feel satisfying because it's easy to complete, but it rarely produces meaningful results. Many people spend the bulk of their time on low-value work because it's less mentally demanding and gives the illusion of productivity. Discipline means resisting that pull and dedicating more of your energy to the work that actually creates change, even if it's harder or more uncomfortable in the moment. Protecting what matters also means setting boundaries. If you don't set them, your time and attention will be claimed by other people's priorities. This could mean turning down meetings that don't serve your goals, setting limits on social media, or creating physical spaces that allow you to focus. Boundaries are not about being rigid or inflexible. They're about creating the conditions in which your most important work can thrive. Without them, even the clearest priorities will be eroded by interruptions and competing demands. It's also worth noting that doing what matters most doesn't always mean doing what's urgent. Urgency has a way of tricking us into believing something is important simply because it demands immediate attention. But many urgent things have little long-term value. On the other hand, the most important actions are often not urgent at all, like building relationships, learning new skills, or planning strategically. Discipline is the ability to give these important, but not urgent actions the time and energy they deserve before urgent distractions consume your day. When you apply discipline selectively, focusing on what truly matters, you create a sense of clarity and control over your life. You're no longer running on the treadmill of endless tasks, you're moving intentionally toward your goals. This clarity doesn't just improve your productivity. It reduces stress and increases satisfaction because you can see the direct connection between your actions and your progress. The satisfaction of knowing you worked on the right things is far greater than the fleeting relief of crossing off dozens of small, inconsequential tasks. Ultimately, real discipline is not about how much you can endure or how many hours you can grind. It's about the wisdom to choose your battles, the courage to say no, and the consistency to protect the work that matters most. By aligning your time and energy with your highest priorities, you ensure that your discipline produces results that are not only measurable but also deeply meaningful. And in doing so, you transform discipline from a grind into a purposeful way of living. Identity has a powerful influence on our habits, often in ways we don't even notice. Most people try to change their behavior by focusing on what they want to achieve, lose weight, save money, read more, wake up earlier. They set goals, create plans, and push themselves to act in new ways. But if those actions are out of alignment with the identity they hold in their mind, the change rarely lasts. You can force yourself to follow a diet for a while, but if you still see yourself as someone who can't resist sweets, eventually your actions will match your beliefs. You can save money for a few months, but if you believe you're bad with money, you'll find ways to sabotage your own progress. Long-term discipline is not just about what you do, it's about who you believe you are. When your identity is in conflict with your goals, your subconscious will pull you back to what feels familiar. This is why people so often revert to old habits, even after experiencing some success. The behaviors might change temporarily, but if the self-image remains the same, the old patterns eventually return. True discipline takes root when you shift the way you see yourself. If you see yourself as a healthy person, skipping the gym feels out of character. If you see yourself as a disciplined professional, missing deadlines feels wrong. The behavior isn't forced, it's simply a natural expression of the person you believe you are. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to focus less on outcomes and more on becoming the type of person who achieves those outcomes. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, you say, I am a runner. Instead of saying, I want to write a book, you say, I am a writer. This shift matters because it changes the way you approach your daily actions. You no longer have to push yourself to act like a runner or a writer. You simply do what a runner or writer would do because that's who you are. This doesn't mean you have to fully believe the new identity from the start. Often, you grow into it by collecting small pieces of evidence. Each time you take an action aligned with that identity, you cast a vote for the kind of person you want to become. The more votes you cast, the stronger the identity becomes until it feels completely natural. If you want to see yourself as a disciplined learner, every time you open a book or take notes during a lecture, you're reinforcing that identity. Over time, the habit becomes easier, not because you become better at forcing yourself, but because it's now part of who you are. Identity also helps you filter your choices. When you have a strong sense of who you are, certain options simply stop making sense. A non-smoker doesn't have to resist the urge to smoke. It's not even an option they consider. A committed athlete doesn't have to think twice about whether to train. It's part of the lifestyle they've chosen. This level of clarity reduces the need for willpower and makes discipline far less exhausting. You're not constantly debating whether to do the right thing. You're simply living in alignment with your identity. Of course, changing identity requires honesty about the stories you currently tell yourself. Many people carry labels from past experiences or from what others have told them. I'm not athletic. I'm a procrastinator. I'm not a morning person. These labels can feel harmless, but they often act as self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe you're a procrastinator, every time you delay a task, it reinforces that belief, making it harder to break the cycle. The first step in transformation is to question these labels and ask whether they are truly part of you or simply habits you've practiced for a long time. Small wins are crucial in rewriting your identity. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You just need consistent proof that you can act in line with the new story you want to tell. If you want to see yourself as organized, start by keeping your desk tidy every day. If you want to be someone who prioritizes health, start by drinking more water and taking short walks. These small, consistent actions are powerful because they send a clear message to yourself. This is who I am now. The link between identity and discipline also explains why public commitments can be so effective. When you declare your new identity to others, telling friends you're training for a race, or announcing that you're starting a business, you create social pressure to act in alignment with that identity. It's not about impressing others. It's about reinforcing the new self-image in your own mind. Each time you follow through, you're proving to yourself and to the world that the identity is real. Over time, identity-based discipline becomes self-sustaining. You no longer have to rely on motivation to keep going because your actions are simply a reflection of who you are. This is why the most disciplined people often describe their habits as automatic. They're not constantly pushing themselves. They're just living in a way that matches their internal self-image. Once you understand this, you realize that discipline is not about forcing yourself to change. It's about becoming the kind of person for whom those disciplined actions are the obvious choice. When identity and action are in harmony, consistency becomes almost effortless, and the results are not just achievable but lasting. Self-discipline is often mistaken for self-punishment. Many people approach it with a mindset of force, restriction, and deprivation, believing that the only way to get results is to push themselves harder and deny themselves comfort. While this approach can work temporarily, it usually comes at a cost. When discipline is rooted in self-hate or constant criticism, it creates resentment. You might comply with your own rules for a while, but deep down, you're fighting against yourself, and eventually you'll rebel. True and lasting discipline doesn't come from tearing yourself down. It grows from a place of self-respect. It's not about making yourself suffer. It's about valuing yourself enough to make choices that serve you in the long run. When you respect yourself, the way you approach discipline changes. You're no longer doing things just because you should or because you're afraid of failure. Instead, you make decisions from the belief that you are worthy of the results those actions create. You exercise not to punish yourself for what you ate yesterday, but because you believe your body deserves strength, energy, and health. You save money not because you're terrified of being broke, but because you believe you deserve financial security and peace of mind. This shift in motivation is powerful because it changes discipline from something you have to endure into something you choose willingly. Self-respect also reframes how you deal with setbacks. When discipline comes from self-hate, a single mistake can trigger a spiral of guilt and self-criticism. You miss one workout and suddenly convince yourself you failed completely. But when discipline is grounded in self-respect, you treat mistakes as temporary detours, not proof that you're incapable. You forgive yourself quickly and get back on track because you understand that one slip doesn't define you. This resilience is what keeps people consistent over the long term, not perfection, but the ability to keep going without letting shame derail them. Another important aspect of self-respect is the way it influences the standards you set for yourself. When you value yourself, you naturally want the best for your life. You stop settling for the bare minimum and start expecting more from yourself in a healthy way. This doesn't mean you become obsessed with chasing perfection. It means you recognize your own worth and make decisions that reflect it. You prioritize rest because you respect your need for recovery. You set boundaries because you respect your time and energy. You work toward your goals because you respect your potential. Self-respect also changes the relationship you have with effort. When discipline is driven by self-hate, effort feels like a burden, something you have to drag yourself through. But when it's driven by self-respect, effort feels like an investment. You're putting time, energy, and focus into something that matters to you because you believe you are worth that investment. This mindset shift turns even challenging tasks into acts of care for your future self. Waking up early to work on a project, saying no to distractions, or following through on commitments no longer feels like punishment. It feels like honoring the person you are and the person you're becoming. It's also worth noting that self-respect creates a healthier balance between discipline and flexibility. When you truly respect yourself, you don't feel the need to push yourself to extremes to prove your worth. You understand that rest, enjoyment, and balance are essential parts of a sustainable life. This prevents burnout and allows you to maintain discipline over the long haul. People who approach discipline with self-hate often swing between intense effort and complete collapse because their approach is unsustainable. Self-respect, on the other hand, encourages consistency by allowing for both hard work and recovery. Your environment and the people you surround yourself with also play a role in reinforcing this type of discipline. When you respect yourself, you choose environments that support your growth instead of constantly testing your willpower. You spend time with people who encourage your goals instead of pulling you away from them. These choices are not acts of selfishness. They are acts of alignment with your values and priorities. Every decision you make in support of your well-being strengthens your sense of self-respect, which in turn makes it easier to stay disciplined. Over time, discipline rooted in self-respect becomes self-reinforcing. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you prove that you can be trusted. Every time you follow through on a goal, you confirm that you are capable. This builds a deep internal confidence that no amount of external validation can replace. You begin to see discipline not as something you force yourself to do, but as a natural expression of how you treat yourself. The choices you make, what you eat, how you spend your time, how you care for your body and mind, all become ways of saying, I matter. When you operate from this place, discipline stops being a battle. It's no longer about winning against your laziness, cravings, or impulses. It's about making choices that align with the life you know you deserve. This doesn't mean you'll always feel motivated, and it doesn't mean you'll never struggle. But it does mean that even on the hard days, you'll have a deeper reason to keep going. One that isn't about fear, guilt, or self-loathing, but about honoring yourself. And that kind of discipline is not only more sustainable, it's far more rewarding. Self-discipline is not the rigid, joyless grind many people imagine it to be. It's not about waking up every day fueled by endless motivation, nor is it about relying on sheer willpower to push through every obstacle. It's about understanding yourself deeply, knowing that motivation will fade, willpower will run out, and life will constantly present distractions. It's about creating systems and routines that carry you forward when your emotions don't cooperate. It's about focusing on what matters most and having the courage to say no to everything else. It's about aligning your actions with the identity you choose for yourself so that discipline becomes a natural expression of who you are. And above all, it's about treating yourself with enough respect to make choices that honor your potential rather than punish your imperfections. When discipline comes from this place of clarity, alignment, and self-respect, it stops being a battle you fight and becomes a way of living that frees you, strengthens you, and shapes the life you truly want. In the end, self-discipline is not a restriction. It's the most powerful form of freedom you can give yourself.